Welcome back, guys. This is Hafsa Slayman, and you're listening to Confessions of a Doctorholic. And as promised, Dr. Gleaton is back with us, speaking about something that's on everyone's mind. The question of the century.
Oh, Lord. The USMLE. So, you've mentioned that you use the USMLE as your exam to progress between the years.
Yes. So the USMLE is a 3-step system that is a nationalized accreditation body. And so you can start with step 1, which you take between your second and third year of medical school. And so you basically everything that you studied in first and second year is on this test. It's a lot of memorization based. It does have 2-step questions, but a lot of it more of is trying to see, did you retain that information? If you pass that test, most medical schools in the U.S. require you to pass the test before you can move on to your third-year clinical rotation.
All right, so when you say pass, what is the passing score and the ideal score to get into residency?
That's a good question. So every year they change the passing score slightly. I believe it was 196 last year. And so it continues to increase every year. It's kind of like interest, unfortunately. It keeps going up. But that is the minimum passing. And so once you have a passing score, that is your score. So you cannot retake it again. But the good question is, what is your goal score? And I would say that depends on what you want to do with your medical degree, what your specialty is going to be. Pretty much everybody in the U.S. is going to specialize in something. There are very few states that let you practice without a board specialty certification.
So basically, if you're an international medical graduate, do you have to score the same score or a higher score? How does it work for people wanting to do the USMLE from outside the United States?
All right, so the first thing is the places that, or the residencies that require the higher scores are the ones that are most desirable. Dermatology, plastics, orthopedic surgeons, general surgeons. Emergency medicine is actually becoming almost as competitive as general surgery at the time. Psychology is becoming more competitive. You can actually go onto websites and see what the average score is for the people that matched this year into any of those residencies. I believe family medicine, I think the average was like 220.
But an international medical graduate has to have a higher score.
They will, in general, have to have a higher score. And that's to unfortunately try and kind of level the playing field, because in the United States we know the quality of the medical schools, and there's a more standardization there, and so it changes things a little bit there, because during medical school in the United States, not only is there the USMLE, but there's other tests that we have to take as a national standard to continue forward. Every single medical student has to take a specific biostats test and a subject test that you have to take as well.
All right, so there's so many resources for the USMLE out there, practice tests and the like. It just goes all over my head. So what do you use to study for the USMLE?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So I think the main thing that people always reach to first is first aid. It is a book that comes out every single year. It's kind of the unspoken Bible of medical students for all of the steps. It's written by Harvard medical students that have taken the exam, and it changes every single year, so you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date version, because they do change the content based on what they expect the content of the exam to be. It is a kind of broad book that gives you, by the way, I don't get paid by them, but it's a very broad book that gives you kind of subject lines, and oftentimes you have to delve more into each line than what you're just reading in the book itself. Sketchy Micro was very helpful. Pathoma was helpful. There's something called Secrets. It's a book that was lab coat size, so I could carry it around with me. I probably didn't start using that until step 2.
I thought you meant actual lab coat. I was like, that sounds massive.
But Secrets breaks things down into bite-sized chunks that I liked a lot. And then there was Hafsa, I had mentioned it to you before. It's word
It's
association.
a word association.
So the way USMLE test takers practice, one of the test taking techniques is that they have a lot of these word associations. So when you see like this thing, it makes you think of something. So the thing that I always fall back on is if you have a baby that ate honey, you should immediately think botulism. Honey, baby, botulism. There it is. And so there are hundreds, if not thousands, of these associations that the test writers kind of lean on to help you give you hints as to what they're doing, because a lot of these are stepwise questions. And so in the book, you'll have one column that says one word, and then another column, what should you think of when you see this word?
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, usually when they examine you on the USMLE, they use classic presentations.
Yes, textbook is what they're going for. And I will say there are things, if they mention somebody's location, there's a reason. Think about it. So if they say they're in the Mississippi Valley, you should be thinking about those kinds of diseases that only happen in that area. They don't just mention where people are from for character building.
All right. And when did you start studying for the USMLE?
I started studying specifically for it probably 8 months before. And then that's at least when I purchased UWorld. I probably purchased UWorld a year in advance because they do sell year subscriptions. And the longer your subscription, the cheaper it is. So it makes sense for you to buy the full year instead of the 6 months because it's almost the same price. So even if you don't use it all the time during that first few months, at least you have it. And maybe you can start to kind of get an idea as you go through your rotations. So it would be more of once you're in your biochem class, see if you're advancing as well as you should. But I would say in the end, you come down to the last few months become a lot more specific. I would say the last 3 months leading up to the exam, I was studying a dedicated amount of time every single day, at least 3 to 4 hours. And then my school gives off 5 weeks before the test for you to decide exactly when you want to take it and how you want to prepare for it. And in those 5 weeks, I studied 7 days a week, 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. And that's how you build up that stamina. Test stamina is definitely something that you have to build up. It's like when you build up to run a marathon or something like that. So you have to train yourself.
So what was your lifestyle like at uni? I feel like I had to ask you this question because so many students are studying 24/7. And I don't know, like, do you even go to the gym? What about sleep and food?
I'm a strong proponent of a balanced work-life ratio. I'm one of those people that I need sleep, and I'm not going to be good studying after 10 p.m. I have learned about myself, and so that's something that you need to find out about yourself and what works for you. Food is definitely a comfort for me, particularly Indian food. I love butter chicken. And so if I'm having a bad day, that's definitely something that's my go-to. You have to find a schedule that works for you and something that is not going to be so strenuous that you won't be able to keep it up for an extended amount of time, because it is at least 5 or 6 weeks of intense studying. So don't think that you can study for 14 hours a day and still have a brain that isn't fried. Yeah. You're going to have to make some adjustments and make sure that you talk to people that are not in medicine, because it's very much something that grounds you when you think you are the top 10% that got into medical school that is even trying to do this, and just remember where you are and how much you've accomplished to be here.
All right, if you could give us one tip to take away, what would that tip be?
Eat when you're hungry.
That's a good one.